Hey, Eric. All right. All right, I guess we'll get started. Well, I can see a level, and actually it looks pretty good. And I can see video. I see the slides. So this is shooting the video. Mike's taking the mic from there. So if you see the green, if you see the mic dancing. Okay, so we should be. I'll do an intro. All right. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the November 2015 UUASC That's Unix User Association of Southern California meeting. Thank you for coming. I have a little bit of a UUASC business, and then a short word from our host, Q, and then we'll bring up Randal, who will talk to us about Dart. Is anybody out there new to UUAC? Are you, aside from cousin Randal, Schwartz has loved the kid. Anyway, at UUAC we have a mailing list that's as heavy as we get. So if you go to UUASC.org, you can join our mailing list. So please do that. There's 3 mailing lists. One is the general mailing list for just discussion of various Unix, Linuxy related topics or what have you. We also have an announcements mailing list, and that's really just for announcements of like when meetups are happening and stuff like that. It's kind of a legacy of the old days when you only had one mail account and it was from work, and you didn't want to, or you wanted to isolate your work traffic from the other stuff, but these days it has less meaning. And then also there's a jobs, UAC-jobs mailing list, which is about Unix or Linux related jobs in Southern California area, or actually if you're looking for work, you can also post up that you're actually on the market looking. Of course, if you're looking for work, wait till you hear from our sponsor. She's got a lot of options. So, but please join the mailing list so you can kind of keep in touch with us. And then also, you probably found us from the meetup group, I assume. So, our meetups, most of the best meetup details are found from the meetup.com site. UUAC, we have 2 chapters, sort of. There's the LA chapter, and then there's a OC chapter. OC chapter hasn't met in a few years, but I'm sure there's going to be some second Monday of the night, and somebody will talk about something. What else? I don't think there's any. Oh, so we meet the first Thursday of the month. Well, we try to meet on the first Thursday of the month, but if Randal will speak on the second Thursday of the month, well, that's when we're going to meet. And we've been meeting here a lot, but actually I work down the street at Verizon Digital Media, and they are happy to host next month's meetup. It's at the Reserve at Playa Vista, which is Jefferson and Alla, near 2 blocks east of Lincoln. And they're going to validate, but there's no beer. Sorry. And the talk will be on rate limiting. Dave Andrews, who works at Verizon Digital Media, will talk about very interesting rate limiting things they need to do to keep the content delivery network serving up content healthy and keep all the bad guys out. So don't miss next month's meetup either, and bring your friends. Also, I'm always looking for speakers. So if you're interested in talking at UUAC, even if it's maybe a small part of the talk, maybe we can get a couple of little ones and mix them together or what have you. You can hit me up on the meetup site. You can hit me up on the UUAC mailing list. I'm always posting announcements and stuff. And let me know, because I always need speakers. I've been on a little cold spell the last few months, but now we're back in business.
It's been a slow summer for meetups.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think a lot of people, it's just meetup fatigue. It's like certain nights, right? There's 5 different interesting meetups going on at the same time. But unfortunately, for the other 4 that are going on tonight, Randal's killing them because it's dark. Yeah, people are chomping at the bit to learn about Dart. Obviously, since there's 150 of you out here right now that we can't get on the screen. Also, Scale. Scale, does everybody know what Scale is? Southern California Linux Expo is coming up. It's 4 days now in Pasadena. I think it's January 24th through the 21st through the 24th, something like that. Yeah. Call for papers just closed. Although there is, I'm part of the planning team for the DevOps Day LA, which is on the Friday. Do show up, but we also have our call for papers is actually opened a little bit. So if you wanted to if you had a DevOps related short talk you wanted to submit, hey, there's still time. but that'll probably be closing, I think, at the end of this week or next week. But get ready for Scale. I don't know if they're selling tickets yet. You can when you're getting your ticket for UUAC or for Scale, if you put in UUASC, you'll get a discount. And I don't know about now, but last time the old joke was, with a user group discount you'll be paying more for parking than to actually go into the 4-day event. But definitely, and remember it's a Thursday too, like the Ubuntu Con, where it's all the Ubuntu community and the developers doing Ubuntu stuff. That's now 2 days. I think that's probably going to be the Thursday and Friday. Oh, Corey Doctorow is going to be speaking on the Friday morning. That's been announced, as well as Brian Lunduke's Linux Sucks Talk is also going to be another big talk. Yeah, it's funny. They have two meetups announced, and one of them is Linux Sucks. Awesome. I like that. So keep in mind, Scale's coming soon, and we've had a lot of UAC speakers that speak there. Speaking of other meetups, right? Carolyn is also the host of the Linux-LA, and I think you're doing something here in a week or so. Well, in Corbin, right?
Well, yeah, we're setting up a couple things. We're setting one up with Corbin.
But one of them is a speaker that's in the room, Corbin Kirsch, will be speaking on, what is it, Apache Mesos. And Docker, of course. Docker? Did somebody say there's going to be a Docker talk? Awesome. So, and once you spin up, you can't just spin it. They're like Frito-Lay's potato chips. You can't only spin up just one. You've got to have 100 of them, and Mesos is one of the ways to orchestrate those things. So Corbin will be speaking here next month. Keep an eye on meetup.com and the Linux-LA site.
I'd like to do it as a workshop too.
So bring your laptop, and we'll all hack containers together. And hey, speaking, not only is Q here to host the Linux-LA meetup, but they also host the UAS meetup, and they do some other stuff too. So let's have a word from Carolyn Oswald. Tell us all of the wonderful Q things.
Hi, so I'm Carolyn. For those of you that don't know me, so for anyone that doesn't know what Q does, we are a recruiting firm. So if you guys need any help with finding a job, finding candidates to fill your internal jobs, if you just need help with your resume, or you want to kind of know what hot skills are out there in the market people are looking for, then go ahead and hit me up. We're always happy to help however we can. If you have any friends that are looking, we also have a really good referral program, so feel free to send them my way. We work on more than just Linux roles, anything really across technology, especially in the web side of things, developers, QA, project managers, all that. Feel free to send them over to me. We're always happy to help however we can. And then if we end up placing them, then we send you a little gift card. So it's always nice. I think that is about it for us. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'll be hanging out in the back. Please do recycle, and I hope to see you all at Linux-LA next month. I'll post that in a couple of days whenever Corbin gets his bio. All right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess, does anybody have any other urgent announcements? Any other meetups that we need to be clued into? I can't see anyway, so I assume that's a no. Or shout it out. Huh?
Code Camp's coming.
Oh yeah, I think the Code Camp. I think that's this weekend, right?
No, it's 14th and 15th.
Okay, that's
next weekend.
The 14th and 15th is the LA Code Camp, right? It's on the USC campus, right?
Yep.
And Mati would kill me if I didn't mention that there should be at least 1 or 2 open source talks. There's a lot of not open source stuff there, but if you're into open source, show up there and bring it with you, because it's, according to Monty, the tide is about to turn. So at Code Camp. So yeah, I think it's mentioned in Meetup. You probably look for Code Camp LA on the November 14th. So that should be pretty interesting as well. So with no further ado, he always packs them in at UUASC with interesting talks, like, who could forget his awesome introduction to Git, and what is it? What was your Half-Life with Perl? And now he's coming here to talk about the Dart language, cousin Randal Schwartz. Yeah, we'll be blinded.
I know. You go throw it back first, right? So, I I've been participating in the Dart community for about 3 years now. I had Seth Ladd, the community coordinator from Google, come on Floss Weekly. How many people here know about Floss Weekly, the show?
Yay!
And I had Seth Ladd on there, and I got really excited about the language, so I really wanted to dig in. And this is back when it was like version 0.4 and stuff, so it's much later than that now. And I said, I think this is going to have legs. And I've been watching it go forward, and it's getting more and more traction, both internally in Google and a lot of external places. So I wanted to give a talk. I go down to UUASC-LA in Porto Alegre, Brazil, almost every year. And I wanted to have something to pitch this year. And so then I know I'll write a talk on Dart, and that'll force me to learn more about Dart, because you know the best way to learn about something is to teach it. And so I put this together like in 3 weeks to do that. But before I had wanted to present it in Porto Alegre, I had suggested to Jordan, hey, can I pre-review it? Can I preview it at a UUASC meeting? And he said, well, yeah, of course. And then I never got around to doing that. So this is the after review rather than the preview. I gave it this like 2 months ago down in Brazil. So there we go. That's probably enough introduction for the introduction. It's probably plenty here. So we'll start with an overview. What is Dart? This gets confused a lot. People can be saying we have a lot of smart JavaScripts or JavaScript compilers now. So what is Dart doing that's not one of those? So it's not TypeScript. It's not CoffeeScript. It's not even ECMAScript 6 coming up soon, or available in some browsers already. It is a fully designed modern language without most of the JavaScript baggage. There's a native VM for development. And this is important for Node.js style server-side code. So we have the same language, both client-side and server-side, like we do with JavaScript, but we have a real language. And it even supports pound bang paths. So you can actually use it in scripts. Of course, it has to do like Perl, would have to completely compile it, which doesn't take very long, it's a very fast compiler, and then run it in the VM. And it transpiles efficiently to JavaScript. When Dart was created, it wasn't like the old Google, of course, had this old GWT thing, the Google Web Toolkit. And the problem with that is that Java, which was the source language, has a much bigger semantic space than JavaScript does. So you have to be careful to stay within the subset of what could be efficiently translated. Dart doesn't have that problem. Dart's semantic outside boundaries fit perfectly within JavaScript. So it was designed with that in mind. It's great for single-page applications, which is all the rage these days. You know, everything's trying. You don't see, one URL, then another URL, then another URL on most modern web applications like Google Maps or Google Mail, things like that. So this was why it was developed, why it was created, because Google wanted something beyond what GWT was, something that worked well with modern browsers, and finally modern browsers with their better JavaScript got to have more power to be able to do that kind of stuff. And it does run in all modern browsers. I think IE 6 or 7, whatever it is. I'm not in the IE world. It's so old that there's just some things that just won't do it at all. So they do have a minimum cutoff. I think basically if Google Maps works with it well, then Dart will also work there fine. So Dart is easy to learn. It looks very familiar. It compiles to JavaScript, which is the biggest thing. But there's also a native VM, as I said a few moments ago. Runs in the client and on the server, as I said. Great tool chain, extremely good tool chain. Modern IDEs, modern code evaluators, like the equivalent of lint, that sort of thing. We'll see some of that during the talk. It also has an interesting type system. It supports types without requiring them. So you can be fully explicit and say, this array is going to have only strings in it. And it will enforce that. And when you're looking at your IDE and you say, I take an element of this array, and then what methods can I call on it? It will give you only string methods. It knows the typing all the way through. But that's completely optional. You can leave it all out. You can just go willy-nilly and vote whatever you want. But then, of course, the IDEs can't give you any extra support. And the type checking is only enabled in the debugger, so the IDE. So you don't get that expense of then paying that type checking at runtime. This means actually the code can sometimes, like after you finish debugging it and deploy it, it might actually run faster than the other language where they have to do type checking all the time on every iteration. It scales really well from small scripts to huge scripts, small scripts to large programs. There's a lot of built-in libraries. We'll get to that in a few days from now. And it supports safe, simple concurrency with isolates. So you may be familiar with workers on client side and threads on server side. It supports those nearly identically and does it really well. And it does it by having shares nothing isolates and use essentially mailboxes in and out to get information between one thread and the other. So you don't have to worry about locking and concurrency there, it just works. Supports code sharing. As we'll see in a few minutes, there's already the equivalent of the cpan for Perl and I forget the other ones for the other thing. I went with Perl, sorry. Okay, but that's already set up. That's been in place actually for a year. So there's already hundreds of packages there. And of course, it's completely open source. In fact, it's already on GitHub. So they moved it from their internal Git repositories to GitHub about 3 months ago. So how did we get here? So the two key players were Google players, of course, Google people, Casper Lund and Lars Back. And they still are basically the primary architects of that. Casper is actually, I believe, like one of the lead project leaders on the V8 project. So he understood a lot about optimizing compilers and getting things to go fast and getting things to work well in the browser. In fact, as a plug for Floss Weekly, I have Casper Lund coming on Floss Weekly next Tuesday morning. And that's a live show. You can actually have, if you have questions you want to hear from the horse's mouth, then 8 a.m. Pacific time, twitch.tv/live. No, live TV, sorry. I say that every show, but I just forgot.
This is Monday, right?
Tuesday. Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Okay? Watch me. It was actually designed for about a year or two internally, and then it was unveiled to the public in October of 2011. The real 1.0 release, though, is November of 2013, so it's still fairly recent. But here's a great move that Google made. They said, we don't really want to own this. We don't want this to just be a Google project, and then we're the sole stakeholders in it. So they got it in the standards bodies. So there's now a completely separate standards body. Of course, a lot of Google players on the standards body, but now it's no longer Google's. It's now belongs to the community. It was running on Google Cloud in November of 2014, so that could be one of your choices for languages to use there. So one of the original strategies, you may have heard of this, is that part of the development environment is that they have the VM actually embedded in Chrome. And so you can actually run the VM in the browser as well as run the VM as a standalone server. But they realized after a while that that was actually devising them, making them go in two different directions. Because getting the VM to work in the browser takes a lot of cooperation with the rest of the stuff that's happening in the browser. And they said it's also slightly distracting because we know we're not going to get the Dart VM in Safari. We're not going to get it in Firefox. We're not going to get it in IE for sure. So why don't we instead concentrate on getting the Dart to JavaScript translator to be more efficient, faster, more features, easier to use, and everything. So that's the new strategy. So in March 2015, they made kind of a 75-degree left turn. For a lot of people, this was a signal that Google was giving up on Dart. But no, they actually did that to make sure that they can be much more focused on putting it everywhere, putting it in all browsers, in the sense of it being JavaScript in all browsers. Yeah.
So do they have plans to do the Dart to JavaScript and then to like the next generation of ASM.js so that...
That's in discussion. Yeah. Okay, so Dart 1.9, there's a few releases I left out, so I don't want to make the slide too busy. But it had enumerated types, and it also had async. I'll talk a bit more about async when we get to the all the streams and futures and things like that. It was released in March of this year. They took their IDE and broke it into two pieces. There was the part that was really smart about figuring out what methods could be called on what objects and things. And then there was, of course, the basic IDE. They pulled out that on-the-fly code analysis stuff and made it a completely independent project. So you can plug it into IntelliJ, or you can plug it into arbitrary browsers. It's in Atom, for example. So they've got a really great way to use this over again. That was a nice forward step. Dartpad, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Think of JS Fiddle, but for Dart. and it has code completion, and it has type checking, and it has help built in. Very, very cool, all running in a browser. So that's a zero install solution to be able to start playing with this stuff. I'll demonstrate it in a few minutes. There was a Dart Developer Summit in April 2015. The third edition of this ECMA spec was published in June, and Dart 1.12 was just released a few months ago. Dart 112 is null aware, so what that means is that if you call a method call on null, it'll blow up. But you can say, only call this method call if it's not null. And you just do it by adding an extra question mark in front of the operator. And it's almost completely universal. Very, very slick. It gets rid of all these if null, do this, else do that kind of code. It really cleans it up. So Dartpad, I talked about that for a second. Let's see if it works on this browser. See if my network connection's up. Okay, it's going to be a little too small. Let me try to make this a little bit bigger here. Oh, that's smaller. Can't get too big because then I can't get to the buttons. It's a really low resolution monitor. So hopefully you can see we've actually got some Dart code up over here on the left-hand side, and that's just what comes when you bring it up. And then we have over here the console output. And this might look pretty familiar. Void main, a nice for loop like from JavaScript or C or even Perl, and print. Really familiar looking stuff, right? But here's some other examples. So let's do Fibonacci. There we go, Fibonacci of 20 is 67, 65. But this is all live code over here on the left-hand side. So I can say I equals 20 plus, and now it's a syntax error. We get the syntax error down in the lower right-hand corner already, expected an identifier. So that quickly it decided that was wrong. And so then I could put, say, I could type Fred. And now it'll say, uh-oh, string cannot be assigned to the parameter type num. Because this is defined as an int, obviously Fred wouldn't work there. So I'm doing strong type checking right here in the browser. This is all written in Dart, by the way. I think that would be obvious, right? But it's not just for command line stuff. Let's do another sample here. Oops, get out of the way. Let's do hello world's HTML. You're going to see a different kind of code come up over there. Over here on the left-hand side now, we're importing Dart HTML. Oh, by the way, when I highlighted that, notice down here, it actually describes HTML elements and other resources for web-based applications that interact with the browser. It pulls up the whole help, runs it all into the browser, so it's available right away. And let's say I'm staring at this main, and I go, what's main? Oh, main is a lambda that returns a void. So it knows that. And what about I? What is I here? I is an int I, and it's a local variable. I'm sorry you can't see this down here very well, but I'm reading it out to you. So that quickly, it's coming up with that. If you go up to, say, this print function, it says here, print is an object, or print takes an object and returns void. And it prints a string representation of the object to the console. Down here in the lower right, there's also a link that says Open Library Doc. So I can go right from here to the standard documentation and get this information in detail. And this is zero install. It's just right there on the website. Let me do another cool one with that. Oh, and what that was doing, by the way, is query selector on pound count. Okay, and then I was taking that variable and putting text in it of hello, and then I had 3 in there, so I did the 3. I'm not going to. I'll come back to this example. I've got some things I can play with it on there. But the other one I want to show is sunflower. Might need to move things around here. Might need to say run. Oh, there it is. Okay. So there, I just drew that in an SVG. Pretty nice. Pretty nice. And so it deals with all this stuff like that. It likes to choose. Here's another one that's fun, and it's actually sort of dynamic. So again, lots of code over here on the left-hand side. Lots of code there. Okay. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to make it smaller. Let's see. Oh, that did it. Okay. So I've got fixed radius, remember the old spire graph? Then radius, then thickness, and we hit, oops, gotta go up here a little ways. Start. Look at that, dynamic drawing. Cool.
Wow.
That's kind of clever. But only that much
Dude, that's awesome.
Now you're mocking me, right?
No.
Oh, okay. I can never tell with him. I can never tell. All right. Oh, but then let's say I want to draw another one on top of it. So radius is smaller or bigger. Head radius.
I mean, if you ever saw our Web 1.5 website, you
Oh, yeah.
would know that this is freaking awesome.
Okay. Start again.
Cool.
Spirograph. It looks better when it's in higher resolution. So
Yeah, but still, I get the idea.
Okay, well, you thought that was cool. How about this? What is it? Solar. It'll take a second to load. So we're actually loading all the Dart code because Dart's been converted to JavaScript. Has to load all that. There we go. And that's this. These are all the. This is all the planets are here. Here's create the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Moon, and you can put planets around other planets, which is how it's getting the moons out there, and how it's getting the asteroid belt, which is generated randomly. It's pretty clever.
Hit the run button
The what button? The what?
when I'm expecting that you hit the run button at the top, but you don't.
Well, it's already running when you load it, but sometimes if it's already running, then you have to get its attention when you change something. Like, for example, I want to change the sun to a red sun. Okay, and Mercury, Venus, Earth, there's sun. That's on there somewhere. There it is, F2. So I don't know my colors very well, so let's just try.
So an indication is 60 frames a second, and this is
That's
its
real.
card? Or
Yeah,
it's
it's
Chrome?
just plain support. Yes. So let's change to 606. I don't even know what color that is. Let's see, it didn't change yet, so I had it run. Now it's going to redraw it.
Oh,
Yeah. Anyway, you can always start to see it's fun. You can start playing with all this stuff, and there's thousands of examples on the net now that look like this. And by the way, you can take this code right here, and you can share it as a gist, and you can put that here. You can even have it embedded. So you can take this iframe here and put it on your page. So you play with it for a while, put it right there, it still works. Okay, cool, huh? Free.
Very cool.
This is free. All right. I can do this all day, so I'm going to stop. Okay. That's all right. Zero install editor. Now, caveat, they send your code up to them for quality assurance. So this is not the private side. This is basically to just play around with it without installing anything yet. So if you really want to do real stuff with it, you have to implement their editors. Like I'm going to say. So WebStorm. WebStorm is a commercial program. Pretty powerful, does lots and lots of things. The new release 11 does even more stuff than 10, which did more than 9. It is free to use if you're approved as a student or for classrooms or for open source projects. So if you're working strictly on open source, you can have WebStorm. Just fill out the right form on their website. But it's only like $79 or something. It's not really expensive. And for what it does, it's really amazing. I've never seen an editor before that was multimodal, where I'm in the CSS section of my code, it auto-expanded, it auto-completed CSS stuff, and when I moved 2 lines down in the HTML part, it auto-completed HTML. That's really cool. So it's a really nice editor. It's well done. IntelliJ Community Edition, open source. That'll work just fine with this. So there's a plugin for it, and that's that code that I said was ripped out from the original built-in IDE. Sublime Text is proprietary, but you can get a plugin for that. Dartpad, as you saw, is zero install. I think I forgot to put Atom up on here, but Atom also does it. Eclipse, of course, open source, uses that same plugin that IntelliJ was using. Or, you know, you're editing text files. Use your favorite text editor.
VI?
If you want. if you like being miserable all the time. I use Emacs.
I was kidding. That's one of those times when I was kidding. Of course you would use Emacs.
Yep. But then you miss out on the code analyzer tools.
Yes.
So you wouldn't get auto-completion or something like that. It'd just be raw text editing.
And and not only do you have to install the app, but you have to install the whole operating system.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Keep reading. So what does the whole world look like? We saw some examples on the Dartpad stuff, but let's sort of build up from scratch. First code, yes, got to do that. Main, print hello world. Nothing real fancy about that. But that works. Put that in and it'll run. So let's give it a variable. Message is hello world, print message. Okay, still pretty obvious. Still familiar syntax if you're familiar with C or Java or, you know, C++. So, but that was an untyped variable. Bar just means there's something in there. But we can also say string, hello world, or string person equals world. Now that will ensure in the debugger, but not at runtime unfortunately, in the debugger it will ensure that I don't ever assign anything to that variable that doesn't subclass from string. So let's get a little fancier. Let's take the command line arguments. So args here, main of args, okay? And I'm using the notation here that we know that args is going to be a list, and we have angle bracket notation, again, familiar for some of you, that the args all have to be strings. So that means that we can then, let's do this actually, so that I assign string person world, and if there's more than one arg, args.length is greater than 0, then I replace world with person. Now this is all completely strongly type checked, so when I typed this dot, the editor immediately told me all the things I can do to args dot, including one of those was called length dot, okay? And the same thing here, if I had taken the wrong type of variable here and tried to assign it to a person, it would have failed as well. So strongly typed, because I typed all my variables here in hello person. Let's refactor that to a subroutine. Let's get a little fancier here. So let's take out that last part, say hello to, which by the way, WebStorm will do. You can run a piece of code, highlight it, and say extract this as a subroutine. Really nice. I know, like Eclipse and stuff can do that, but it's similar to Eclipse. And then we say hello to string a person and a hello person. So, and again, since it knows the signature of this subroutine, it'll also know what kind of variable can go in there and strongly type it across the two of them. Okay. I'm probably saying nothing to people who've been doing Java before or whatever, but I'm always amazed coming from typeless languages that you can actually do that kind of little annotation. So, what are the important concepts about it? Like Smalltalk, which has influences on Dart, by the way, I'll get more to that later. Everything is an object, inheriting from the object class. And as I said before, typing is optional, but it provides hints to all the tools, so it can tell what kind of variables can go in there, what kind of values can go to the variables, what kind of methods can be called on the values of the variables. And again, typing provides guidance and check mode. It will ensure that during your debugging periods. Again, when it gets compiled into JavaScript or gets running on the VM, if the VM is not running in check mode, then it throws all the checks away, but you've already debugged, hopefully, and got everything to work. The code is completely compiled before execution, similar to other scripting languages and Java and all those guys. And so we have, just to enumerate them, you have top-level functions, you have functions that are local to blocks, and you have anonymous functions, lambdas, all available there. And as well as class and instance, methods, and variables. Privacy is just two-level, public and private, and it's completely decided by whether the thing begins with an underscore or not. You just want to keep it easy. All those multiple levels of privacy and stuff got real crazy. So they said, no, we're going to keep it simple. Let's make it so basic people can do that. There are a number of built-in types. We have ints and doubles. Int is infinite precision in the VM, but unfortunately we're stuck with native ints in JavaScript. So you have the precision of, I don't know, was it 2 to the 64th or something, 2 to the 32nd? Some number, right? I'm not a good JavaScript guy. Okay. String is, you have 16 internally. You never really see that on the outside because unless you look at actual code points. Booleans, type bool, only values there are true and false. Lists are indexed starting at 0. Maps are like hashes, indexed by objects. So it would use this object identity to form the keys. And you could narrow that down by saying this map only has strings for keys, and it will enforce that. But ultimately, it's full objects. And a symbol, which is just a string that's identical but it's also equal. It's used for a lot of internal stuff, so that it does get exposed as something that you can see. Numbers, okay. Infinite precision ints, as I said this, normal range in JavaScript. So it is one of the few places where you can tell whether your Dart program is running as JavaScript or running in the VM. You just put a really long number there and it overflows. Then that's obviously JavaScript. Doubles are again classic, IEEE standard. Here's some sample ints and strings. Has hex notation. There's a large number there. There's something pylike. Just take that and divide it by 1e31. And then my main code could be print pylike, and it would show what was actually happening. And that's also an example of a lambda. It's a little arrow notation. I think they also brought that into ECMAScript 6 or something. Have that like that. A lot of this stuff borrows from ECMAScript 6 too, because a lot of people are working on everything in that area. You can convert between strings and numbers. You can use .parse. So you say this string, see if it's an int, then return the number. See if it's a double, then return that number. Since everything is an object, you can call methods on literal number constants, which is a little weird to me. I know Ruby can do this, and Perl 6 can do this, but I haven't seen languages before that be able to do that. It's kind of cool. Which also means you can type 6 dot and tell me what you can do to it, and it'll tell you everything you can do to an integer. And it figures that out. It's really cool. And then sort of the stuff down there similar to what that is. Booleans, there's only 2 literals, true and false. Only true is true, everything else is false, except in checked mode. In check mode, if you're JavaScript, it's normal JavaScript rules. But in check mode, it actually ensures that if you have like an if statement, that has to be a Boolean. You can't just put if 7. It won't allow it in check mode. So when you're in the debugger, if you have a variable that accidentally got something that's not a Boolean in it, it's broken, and it tells you. Yep. Sorry, then.
So earlier you said, that in the debugger you get this type checking, and then I guess in a production run, unfortunately you don't. And I don't understand the unfortunately part, because if the type checking was good enough in the first place, then what is it that you still need at runtime?
Right, I think I alluded to that slightly. I said that you hope to have debugged your entire program, so now you don't need the type statement, right? And therefore it makes it faster. I think we're saying the same thing. Are we?
Well, when you said unfortunately, then it's like, well, so what is
what's
unfortunate about not having it when you're...
I retract the word unfortunately. Unfortunately, I said that. Yes, okay. That's a good catch.
Are you, can you build a little bit more complex types, like a general numeric, which can be either double or integer that you're allowed, but you're not allowed just any old type, or is it just type checked or not type checked?
They're looking at adding union types soon.
Okay.
Not there yet.
So like maybes and
and
like a higher level numeric type that would include rationals.
Yes.
And whatnot. Okay.
Well, there's a rational library already.
Yeah.
So you can do that, and then you
So then if you say, is it numeric?
Yeah.
And then there's a generic test that says yes or no, it's one of the numeric types.
Well, both int and int and double inherit from something called numeric already.
Okay.
So you could say, yes, this is
So
numeric.
something that would be introduced, say, in the rational library would be, the system would be told that it also inherits from
rational inherits from. So I think numeric is an interface, because there's a bunch of things that numerics can all do. And so that's an interface, and then that's an abstract interface, and you have implementations underneath it like int and double.
Okay. Yeah. So and then let's say instead of doing exceptions, you can have maybe numeric, and then do like railroad track style programming where you just pass the not numeric maybe part along until you decide it's time to check for product.
Yeah, well, one of the things it does have is generics, and we'll get to that, and that might help some of it. So you can say that an abstract class has a I'll do it there. So I thought I could have slides. Okay, so I said this already. If you debug in check mode in the debugger, then, or running in the VM in check mode, the booleans have to be the true or false, or it throws an exception. So typical lists, known as arrays, ordered collections. Zero-based indexing, first element is item 0. So in check mode, during development, can be optionally typed. So here I have just var meets cow, pig, chicken, and that's perfectly fine. Meets 0, meets would print array. Oh wait, lists have a two-string method that prints it out pretty close to what it looks like. So there's automatic expansion of stuff like that. You don't have to write your own debug dumping routines all the time. And meets of 0, of course, would be cow. .add on meets is going to add a turkey to the list. And so meets.length is going to be, in this case, 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. So meets is 3 is going to print that turkey I just added. But we can go and make only numbers here be a strongly typed num, which means that everything in this list always has to be a number. Now notice we put var here. That's the type of the container. So if we put the word capital list there, it would actually restrict numbers to only ever be a list. But I just put var there because it doesn't really matter. That's what I was trying to demonstrate. Then we added depth. Again, it'll fail a check run, but it'll work okay in unchecked run. So it involves a rich set of methods: add all, index of, remove at, clear, sort, many, many more. Lists have like 50 or 60 methods with them. Maps. Maps is like a hash in some languages. Keys and values, both objects. Maps are created with a literal syntax or with new map. So here I have our Randal, which is going to be a map. And here's open curly brace, close curly brace syntax, which is fine. Key and value separated by colons here, and commas separate the pairs. So again, the same sort of syntax for coming inside of it. We're going to get the city value here, which is this one, and that'll return Portland, Oregon. And I can update things, of course, and update zip 97001. Okay. Apparently moved. But I can also tell when I create this Randal thing that the keys and values are both strings. So we've given strong type information to this now. If I wanted the key to always be a string and I wanted the value to be anything, I would just make the second one be object. Because everything inherits from object, so that would always allow anything I wanted on the right-hand side. Lots of flexibility. And by the way, if I did that, then when I tried to change zip to 97001, it would actually abort. Yeah.
Is there a way to tell it that once you have defined the keys, then they're frozen so that you're not allowed to add a zip because zip wasn't in there, wasn't one of the allowed keys?
I believe there's limited maps, yeah. I don't know what it's called, yeah. But that's not an inherent feature of map. That's something that's subclass from map. It has maps interface, but it has something in there also. Yeah, that's how you tell it that. You use a different class. Okay, functions. Again, types are optional, but they're checked if present, and they do assist the IDE. So here I've told, say my name, I've told the IDE that it never returns anything, and that the first parameter has to be a string. So say my name too, we're defining it similarly, but now this is the one-line format. If the entire body of the subroutine is a single expression, then you can shorten it to like that, not need all the extra curly braces and stuff. So main here is defined being the same way. Main is taking no arguments, and here's the definition for main. Arguments can be either positional or named. So here I have named arguments. One of them is they're both strings. One of them's called first, one's called last. And the way I would invoke that is like down here, first colon, last colon. But I could put that in either order. I could say last colon, first colon, and it would still work. And up here, if I don't give it that last name, I'm going to give it the first name, then last is going to come in as null, which is a special value, designated value. And I can actually ask for that. If last isn't null, we'll print my name is first last. If last is null, we're just going to say first. So optional arguments there. And there are defaults too, but we're going to do that in a few slides. In fact, not a few slides, right there. Yeah, go ahead.
Is Dart actually case sensitive?
Yes, for those are identifiers. So yeah, so if you had capital S, it wouldn't work. You'd be an error.
Because you're writing, for example, the function my and name in the capital first letter.
Yep.
So if you would write, say, my name with small m,
yep,
that would be a different function,
yes.
and I would get an error.
Right. Oh, that too. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, if you invoked it and you never defined it, yeah. Yes, it's case sensitive. So you can have required args listed first, positional args, followed by optional args. And optional args can either be positional or named, but not both. So there's only three different kinds of functions. There's totally defined arguments, there's arguments, and then optional positional arguments or optional named arguments. So optional args can have defaults, or they can return null otherwise. So here's how we define that last is optional. And then, of course, it looks like the other subroutine I did before, right? And here's one where I say the last one's optional, but I have a default value for it. So it's an optional second argument, but we know what the default value is going to be. It's right there in the code. Okay? Operators, rich set of operators. I mean, just imagine most languages. It probably has it in there somewhere. 15 levels of precedence. The normal usage of parentheses to override. Shouldn't be any surprises here. Integer divide, tilde slash. So that's how you force it to be integer. Otherwise, it actually coerced to being a function, not a function, a fraction. Fraction is one of the types. So if you say 2/3, you get precisely 2/3. It doesn't actually divide that out unless you ask it to. Pre and post, increment and decrement. Type testing, is not, and as. Compound assignments, a plus equals, typical thing there. Bitwise operators, you know, bit and, bit left shift, that sort of thing. Basically everything that JavaScript does quickly, it can also do, because it wants to translate to fast JavaScript. Typical if then else and question mark colon. For control flow, we've seen the if already. Generally, again, very similar to C, JavaScript, Java, kind of all in the same family there. If and else, of course. For loops, we saw an example of those on the dartpad. While and do while loops, again, similar to most languages. Switch in case, so finally the switch statement's in there. I mean, not finally. Assert. Assert looks for a true value. If it fails, the second argument gives it an optional message, otherwise it creates a message out of your code. But the asserts are only working in checked mode. So you can sprinkle your code with all these tests to make sure in debugging everything's correct. And then those tests all disappear trivially when it's compiled to JavaScript or running the VM in unchecked mode. Exceptions. Of course it has exceptions. So unlike Java, there's no need to declare the types you will throw or catch. Thank God. That's such a mess of Java. Yeah. I've been told that some Java programmers basically just say, don't tell any types that it's going to catch. Then they run it once, and the compiler jumps out the error message of all the things it has to catch, and then they cut and paste that back in. That's the way people do it. So yeah, it's none of that mess. None of that mess. Exceptions can typically subclass from error or exception, which are built-in classes. I forget the difference between the two. I don't remember now. But you can throw any object, which means you can throw everything. Standard try catch finally sequence, so nothing surprising about that. Classes. Again, everything is an instance of a class, ultimately inheriting from object. It has single inheritance, none of this diamond inheritance crap or anything. It's a single inheritance with mixing stuff. So sort of modern thinking seems to bring us all around to this all the time, so let's just do it that way. The new keyword can be used with a class name, so we've said new rectangle, okay, or you can have named methods in the class, so rectangle dot something, and that's how you distinguish multiple ways to construct a rectangle. You should either use the class name by itself or class name dot instance name. Objects, of course, have members consisting of methods, instance variables, nothing surprising, this is standard object programming. Classes can be abstract, typically defining something you would bring in with a mix-in. And that just means they're not defining any bodies of the methods, it's just simply an abstract class. Many operators can be overridden to provide a custom interface. So I think about 2/3 of the operators, including array indexing and array assignment, and of course plus and minus, those kinds of things. Those can all be overridden. You can extend a class with the extends keyword, so that's how you get your inheritance with that keyword. Class members look like this. Here's a full actual real class. We have here class point, and the num x and y are the member variables, and they're both nums. Again, this is strongly type checked. And we can define a toString method, which is used by the built-in stuff every time it needs a string. So it's a very special name for a subroutine, for a method call. And object defines one, and so it's defined all the way down, but if you override it, then you get more things that are precise. Like here, I wanted it to print point with square brackets after it, and the x and y values. So we can start here with vars, do point x is 4, point y is 7. By default, the members here are exposed unless they begin with an underscore. Underscore means they're private. So for all the variables that you want to expose, you just simply don't have an underscore on them, and then the external variables can be accessed. And when I print this point, print always wants to print a string, So it calls toString on that point, which of course is the method I define. And that's the way it'll be printed out. You can also define getters and setters for instance variables. It allows for transparent migration. What I mean by that is if I define a getter for X, then the caller here, or sorry, that'd be a setter, wouldn't it? Yeah. If I define a setter for X, it won't change the interface at all. The outside code does not know whether it's calling one of my special getters or setters or whether it's just calling the standard member assignment, member fetching code. Which means I can transparently migrate something. For example, put in hooks so that anytime anybody set X, it also updated some other variable. Yeah, it's no good place to see this stuff. Yeah. Either I'm blocking it or this is blocking it. It's an interesting place. Sorry, what? I know. There's you get mad when you do this. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Really, constantly. That way everybody can see everything. All right.
If you move over here like I did,
yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah. Okay. So again, class variables and methods also supported. Generics. I mentioned this a couple times earlier. I just realized I designed this thing for about an hour, and I had to speak slower because it was being translated to Portuguese. So I'm probably a little ahead of schedule here.
That's fine.
I can go and do some more dark examples. I can see people take more questions. Okay, so generics.
Change the colors of the sun a few more times.
Yeah, maybe change randomly. That'd be cool.
There you go.
Yeah. We see how we code live in dark. We've been coding it for about 100 hours or so. All right. So optional types are optional. Why use generics? Because again, we want to inform the compiler during check mode and the IDE during development that we have particular shapes and styles of things. So here is names is now a list of strings, and you need a parentheser because it's an empty list. So new list normally takes a list of what the initial values are. Okay, and then I say add all. And add all takes another list, which is the list literal, and it checks to make sure that Randal and Kermit are both strings. And so if I say instead add all 2020, that is going to fail because now we have defined specifically not just the outer shape that it's list, but the inner value that has to be a string all the time. And it can also be used for interfaces. So here's a cache, and it takes type T. What's type T? It's just a stand-in, because this is an abstract class. And we can say then that there is a cache getter, which is like an element of a hash, an element of an array getter, and we're making an operator like that. And we're going to say it takes a string key, and it returns a type T, which is the same thing as defined up here. So then I can also define a setter, an array setter, and we give it both string key and T value. But the important thing here is that this T in these three places means that if I make this a concrete class by extending this or mixing this in, then I would say something like cache int. Okay, that means that the T's here in this sort of abstract template would then always become int for each of the specific implementation things. So it's really great because I can say, here's the shape of a class without making concrete the specific things. Yes?
So for list, when you do add, does it always add at the end? Is there an option?
I barely hear you.
For the list, is there an option to add items to specific keys?
To add specific keys?
No.
I'm sorry. I'm hearing you.
So for add all, it's always going to add it at the end, right?
I think there's an insert at the beginning too.
Insert into a given index.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of things I can't show because I just don't have 3 hours. Okay. 30 minutes. Okay. Asynchronous operations. If you're familiar with the new JavaScript operations that do async, where you get streams and futures and things like that, or promises, those are all baked into Dart. So you can provide something like a future as part of the return value, and that means it'll deliver one value sometime soon. Okay, hopefully before the Earth blows up or whatever, right? There's also string, which has many values over time. So you might think of that as like when you subscribe to click events on a web page. What you get back essentially is a subscription. It's just in Dart that's implemented as a stream. So you call the thing that says, I want to know about click events. And what you get back is a variable now that you can say, when the next click event comes in, run this code. And so that's what a stream looks like. They're very similar in that they work, they basically make parts of your program asynchronous. And you can use try, catch, finally style logic with either of these. The syntax is a little odd. It looks more like this. Well, actually, no, it's simple. So here's the keyword async. This lets the compiler know that it's not actually returning an int or immediately or whatever. It's actually running as a sort of not a background task, but from time to time the Dart will go over and actually start running this when other things are blocked. And so we say here await, which says this is also async. So what happens here is that this lookup version is going to be stored into an internal variable that represents a future. And then when the future finally fires, it comes back to this code and assigns the return value from that future now into version. And so we can do something here and something else there based on whatever the version is. But this would be useful, for example, if lookup version had to go to a web server and get the version number, which has to happen asynchronously. You can't have that happen at the same time the rest of the code's going on. And so, but we still wanted to wait for that to do before I did anything else. I'm not explaining this very well because it takes about 10 pages to really get this explainability. But if you're, again, the bottom line is, if you're familiar with the Promise libraries, the upcoming future stream libraries, this works just like that. Speaking of libraries, a bunch of stuff comes with Dart. Dart core has numbers, collections, strings, heavy manipulation, math, that sort of thing. Asynchronous programming, that's what gives us the futures and streams and things like that. Math and random, two big examples there. For browser-based apps, you can pull in Dart HTML as one of the packages, and that gives you full access to the browser, the DOM, asynchronous I/O, WebSockets, everything in that area. Dart I/O. So if you're running the browser, you want to talk to HTML, but if you're running on the server, as I said earlier, you can replace something like Node.js. This is where you'd want to have like file opens or directory listings or running shell processes, things like that. That would be done with Dart I/O. So an application will pull in one or the other, but never both, because it doesn't make sense, because you can't do file operations on the client side, except in real restricted circumstances. Convert, got full JSON, UTF-8, all that sort of stuff. Dart can be introspective. You can actually have Dart ask the class what are its methods. And this comes in really handy when we write test suites. We can actually have it test multiple things and see what actually happened behind the scenes. So even though you would think that you can't get to the underscore variables because those are technically private, the mirrors can actually reach behind the scenes and figure out everything else. So that's great for testing and stuff. And many more standard libraries all come, this is all shipped with Dart. But wait, there's even more. It's the pub. The Dart guys have stayed with sort of the Dart theme, and so the pub is the pub. But that's sort of the equivalent of CPAN. Yep. There you can publish shared libraries. You can incorporate those libraries into your project. There's a YAML file in your project that talks about acceptable version numbers. So you can say, I'll take any version of this code. I'll take only versions between 1.2 and 1.6 of this code. So you can have it when you update that, make sure that everything's consistent. Of course, they all have version dependency files as well, so you could get into a situation where, it's DLL hell, but at least you can start with it being reasonable. And other people can view your dependencies, of course, when they pull down your pub/YAML. And that's all I have. Okay. Cool. So many parts of this talk were inspired by these sources. Good future research. I'll leave this up for a few minutes for you to write it down. The Dart Wikipedia page. Actually, I got about a third of the text for the first 5 pages of the Wikipedia page. So I have to acknowledge that it's community license for this talk. Seth Ladd had written a book that's available publicly called Dart Up and Running, and you can read that entire book online on dartlang.org.
Cool.
Which I'll have up there. The Dart News, which is news.dartlang.org. Pretty much everything is dartlang.org. Oh, I just said that. There we go. And that's that. Questions? More questions? Yes.
So, you said that, you know, the reason you run into problems with going from Java to and the JVM to trying to compile that to JavaScript is that Java has like more complicated semantics that means that it can try to do things that it's really hard to do in JavaScript.
Right.
But that Dart is more compatible, you know, its set of capabilities or concepts is not something that would overtax the the JavaScript.
Yeah.
And then you said that they also have their own virtual machine.
Yes.
So if somebody comes up with a new virtual machine, I pretty much want to know, well, why would you need a new virtual machine if an existing virtual machine is good enough to cover this kind of semantics that you require? So like if somebody says, oh, we use Beam for airline because airline wants to do things that the Java virtual machine has no concept of, or like ours is better.
Yeah.
So if somebody says our virtual machine is better, we can justify writing our own virtual machine. The natural first question for me is, well, why another virtual machine? What does it do better than whatever's running in the...
You would have to simulate at probably one level of indirection the type checking that's specific to Dart. And you wouldn't get that quickly or cheaply.
But if you're talking about the runtime where the type checking has all been taken care of.
Well, you can run in check mode too.
Oh, okay.
And the debugger, when it's talking to the VM, as it's running in the VM, has to have an interface that allow it to do things like, introspect and watch points, things like that. The Java VM would not have been able to get anywhere close to this.
Okay.
And also,
so then when you do compile to JavaScript, like you're doing in Safari now, then you lose some capabilities at runtime to do like introspection.
Well, they're building hooks into the JavaScript that can do the equivalent of some of. Okay. But it's only turned on when you're debugging in the browser.
But then it gets less efficient than if it
was exactly. You would use that in debugging. Yeah. Yep.
Randal?
Sure.
I think I asked you before your talk about running this more for Node or in the browser as a client.
Yep.
But knowing that you can do both, has anyone taken advantage of that? You know, if there's any good libraries to abstract AJAX to provide RPC, provide some nice moving data structures back and forth?
Yeah, there's the pub's got like 40,000 entries right now, so I have to be able to track them all.
Maybe
a red Dart program. Yeah.
Have you played with anything specific that for helping the client server apps?
No, but there. I've been watching the Dart mailing list, and people have talked about how there are some specific things that, because they were writing on Dart for both client and server side, they were able to really reuse their code.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And then they abstracted whether they were calling Dart.io or calling Dart HTML through conditional imports. And so they just provided the right level of abstraction to make that work. Yeah, so I know definitely people are doing that. So this has the potential, but the other thing is, just to make it clear, I told you this before we started too, the Dart VM has the same sort of isolates that the worker stuff does in the client side. So you have basically shared nothing threads. And you build everything with mailboxes. I think I did say that out loud here. I can't remember now. All right. Yeah. Okay, good.
You touched on it.
Which right now with Node.js, if you want to eat up all the cores, you basically have to run multiple instances of your application, or you have to figure out a way to abstract it out because it only really sits on one thread. Whereas Dart VM out of the box already works that way. So you don't have to think about solutions for that, which is really nice.
So are you using Dart for anything?
I've been commissioned to write a Dart application for my favorite client in Sec Users.
Cool.
Yeah, so their booking engine needs to get replaced because it's old, ugly, not written by me, Perl code, that I have to maintain, and I'm getting tired of that. He's spending more of his money for me to maintain the code than write from scratch. So we're looking at that. It would be nice drag and drop, things sliding all around.
Or at least that's what you tell him when you're sick of the code.
Yeah. Oh no, he knows the code. The person who wrote the Perl code ahead of me, since I got a couple extra minutes here, was a big SQL guy. And one of the things that you do in SQL, because you can't have trailing commas, is you use leading commas. So A, next line, comma B, next line, comma C. Imagine about 1,300 lines of code of Perl that look like that. Leading dots, leading commas, leading dots for concatenation. So A, next line, dot B. It all looks like that. Ugh. Anyway.
Is that going to be a client or a server application?
It'll be a browser app. And basically, when you come to book at the site for the cruise, you go through this like 8-page application, flash. Oh, he did everything by hidden fields to carry the data from one page to the next. And so you have to keep making sure you got all those with a bunch of prints at the bottom of every page. Yeah. Nobody has to tell me that there's bad Perl code in the world. I've worked with a lot of it.
And have you seen any killer Dart apps? Is there anything that's...
The biggest thing that's, one of the pages of dartlang.org, might as well go there, is there's like a wins. Let's see. How do I get on any page? There we go. There's my little bar that says, I'm in presentation mode, that's one. Now it's even worse. I'm not used to Chrome. Okay. New page. Oh, there it is up there. Don't say anything. Oh, it's because I'm in giant mode. So this will give you a good overview of everything on here. Connecting, indexing.
So you're running Chrome and Safari on that machine so that you can compare the Chrome native VM to running in Safari without the native VM?
Well, I'm using WebStorm, and WebStorm can either run it in, what I'm doing here is just real Chrome, but it can also run it in Chromium, which is the VM embedded debug version of Chrome that has the Dart VM in it, and it can talk directly to that and pick up information from that. And you can also run it in Safari, so you just basically say launch using these different methods. For anything that's not Chromium, it'll do it as JavaScript.
So, Randal, can you walk us through how would that work in a client app?
You'll never deploy Chromium. That's not going to happen.
I'm compiling my Dart code to JavaScript.
Yes.
Okay, and it's a dense, reduced, minimized version.
Right. It's one big .js file.
What about runtime errors or debugging that if there's issues now that it's getting reported from my users?
Oh, you just put try-catch finally blocks in around the things you need to, and at the top level, I mean, that's how you do any web app.
Just don't have bugs. And
What?
Just don't have any bugs.
Yeah, well, as I think it was it Knut that said the opposite of debugging is enbugging, which is programming. Right? Okay, I was going to show here. So try Dart, stable version there. C Dart, yay. Write Dart, dive deep. But these are really nice. This little overview here, really quick. This is under an hour. You can read through a lot of stuff. In fact, most of the stuff that's in my talk, I basically walked through that and made sure that I had the interesting parts of it. And then all the tools, libraries, things like that. Dart's new, get familiar. This again looks like stuff I showed you earlier. Optionally type, modular.
Yeah, we're going to look for any killer apps, maybe looking through.
Yeah, let's try to find the page. More.
I can't believe it. Randal can't find the pub.
Oh. Yeah, thank you. No, that's later. Here's a bunch of them that are already there. There's not a lot that I've actually talked about. Oh, yeah, I'll scroll right up here. So next generation client applications for our productivity suite built with Dart. Online catalog of studies in French higher education. Oh, AdSense is all cutting over to Dart, so all their external code's going to be written in Dart. Yes, that's an app. That's a
No, that's
and that's Google dog fooding.
yeah.
Yeah, very important. Security Monkey from Netflix.
Really?
Interesting, yeah. Hey, there's some more on there that I didn't know about. Easy Insure, web application allowing to search 190,000 insurance agents. Dart Void, application hosting platform. An internal sales tool. This is the first one we heard about, where they basically replaced a bunch of GFP with Dart, and found it was so much easier to maintain, so much easier to expand. That's just what we're right with. There's Drone.io, currently continuous integration. Collaboratively record music with your browser. Built with
Continuous
Dart.
integrate. So that's for like build stuff.
Yeah.
Your Darty Jenkins.
And the test framework is very extensive and tests client-side apps, server-side apps with a really good framework with that. Even native JavaScript apps connected to it, it still manages to get all the way through. Agile project management tool.
Oh boy.
One, yeah. SNS montage. Photo book editing built with Dart. Web storage includes the Dart plugin. That's not really built with Dart. Optimizes Google Apps for schools. There we go. Google Fiber is being managed, I guess, with Dart apps. CodeShip, another continuous integration support. Flash Pro can export to Dart. So you can build that one if you like Flash and you're a pro. Okay. Health Dynamics. Email infrastructure as a service from MailChimp, Mandrill. WorkTrail. So yeah, quite a bit. Oh, and if you're familiar with the JavaScript libraries of Polymer and Angular, including the extra stuff that Google is doing with those to make the materials design, all that's being integrated into Dart. There's Dart libraries that are still a little preliminary for both Polymer and Angular. And there's also Swift. Swift.
Well, election result maps. Hey, that's gonna come in handy.
Yeah, exactly. So, is there anything new with Dart yet? I don't know. Anyway, AdWords for video. Build with Angular Dart. Google Shopping Express, Lumo.
Well, the AdSense is that's pretty heavy.
Yep. Dynamic analysis and visualization of interconnected data. Interesting. FX simulator, Forex simulator based on Stage Excel. Cool. Anyway, so there's a lot of stuff out there. They're also working on, I think they renamed it, not to Swift. What's the name they finally called it? But they're working on making cross-platform iOS and Android apps that use a supercharged browser thing, but you write it once for both platforms. And you spend a lot of time and money when you're going to do stuff with iOS and Android, because it's a wholly different development system. But this is basically going to be turnkey. You use like WebStorm, edit all your Dart code. You have nice objects, nice windows, things like that, and then it just works on both platforms.
You hit the whatever, the deploy or whatever, and you get a .js file for iOS and another one for Android.
And then they provide the wrappers, the Java wrappers and the Swift wrappers to be able to hook those in. Yeah, that's still preliminary, but it's already on GitHub.
And how does Dart compare to Go?
They have different design goals. Go is designed to compile down to a very fast-running single app that doesn't need any libraries.
Okay.
Dart ultimately delivers in JavaScript something that's kind of like that. One thing I forgot to say, and it's really important. In most traditional JavaScript frameworks, if you want to write something like in jQuery, it has to load the entire jQuery down because it doesn't know what piece of that you're using. The Dart JavaScript compiler uses tree shaking and actually figures out what subroutines and methods you actually call in your code and gives you only that piece of the JavaScript. So you can get entire complex applications in Dart that are smaller than the jQuery library. Very slick. That's one of the most exciting things, actually. I didn't know why I didn't have a slide on that. Anything else? Questions?
Do you mind?
Sorry.
How does it compare to the React?
You can do that sort of React stuff with it. I mean, in their libraries, I think Angular Dart has a lot more in terms of two-way bindings and stuff. Reactive, I think, has some limits to that, and you do a lot of the work yourself. But I can pull up Angular Dart, but sometimes it doesn't work on over the slow connection here. At least the demos that they have. But you can basically say, I have this variable here in Dart, and it connects to this same named variable in my HTML, and you can have a two-way connection. So you have a readout of it in the Mustache code, and you have a form, and as you're changing elements in the form, it automatically updates the code, and then also updates the output too. So it's really nice.
So will it support Firebase as your backend?
Oh yeah, that's a three-way binding, and yes, it does that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's Dart libraries for Firebase. Yeah. And you have a question?
Just a request. Could you put that solar system demo back up so I can get a picture of it?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Let's start.
Yeah, and then can you hack it? So what we're going to do? Make the we had a modification.
I found a 3D one out there too, so if there's people doing some 3D graphics.
Oh, cool. Let's see if that works out. Slowly. Actually, no, I can't hack it because I haven't learned the HTML library very well.
So if you had existing body of JavaScript code and you wanted to reuse like just a library of subroutines, but do all your new code that calls it in Dart, then you wouldn't have any, you'd be able to have them work together.
Yeah, there's full JS interoperability right now. That's how the Angular people are talking to Angular JS. They're making it better though, because you still have to build in the current stuff. You still have to build. You still have to build proxy objects by hand. And the new code, they're actually going to make it so once you're talking to the JavaScript environment, you just use an array or use a hash and it just works, which would be really, really nice. Yeah.
Because this guy was just mentioning 3D stuff. And he said, oh yeah, there's this library called D3.js.
Oh, D3, yeah. There's already there's a pub library that talks to D3.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's because somebody already invested in D3, not because it just works without having to have the glue logic in it.
A lot of people are also writing completely native Dart mimicking for a lot of that stuff too, though. I mean, I know it's like separate development then, but I mean, should be close to loading.
It's so slow, right?
Can't what?
I think they keep so slow all of a sudden. It's slower than that. What else to do just to
Are you saying low? I can't hear a word.
It seems so slow.
Oh, it's because I have a slow connection. Oh, look, it's still purple.
Yay.
You need to get that Google Fiber.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm doing this is I'm actually on my hotspot that dies in another 4 hours. It literally dies. This is Clearwire. I had it for like 6 years. It was $50 a month for unlimited. I mean, I had like 50 gig, 60 gig a month on it. And that's why they went under, because people fell down. And it was also based on WiMAX, and sadly, WiMAX is going away. And so Sprint's turning off their WiMAX towers tonight, and so this dies. Oh, what a good deal. But now, okay, any other questions before we start wrapping up? I have to keep sitting here all day. Anyway, so yeah, tomorrow morning, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., not tomorrow, Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning, 8 a.m.
Next week.
Live.twitch.tv, meet Casper Lund electronically. There's a chat room there. You can ask me questions to ask him if there's something more you want to know about this. Okay, good.
This is going to sound are the notes going to be available?
This slide set's already on SlideShare.
Yeah, I found it. I was just looking for it to set up the meeting stuff, and I just Randal. Yeah. Googling for Randal Dart FizzLA.
Yeah. Yeah, it's already up there.
And I'll put a link in the meetup page too, and then this is up on YouTube as well. We live stream this up to YouTube.
Yeah. And there's also the video shot of me at FizzLA.
Oh, I didn't find that
because I had to wait for the translators. Yeah. So anyway, Anyway, I'm excited about Dart. I think it's got legs. There's already like 3 or 4 books in the works, so I don't think I'm going to be the guy that does like learning Perl for this. But I also want to start writing classes for it, and longer programs, of which this is my first 1 hour, my first program. And I think it has enough legs that I'm sort of involved getting at the same stage that I started getting involved with Perl with. And that Perl's been very good to me, and I'm looking for the next thing after Perl.
Yeah, the interesting here, it goes into so many more different directions.
Right.
The compiling down to JavaScript, and having anything that can just straight up run in the browser is powerful, especially, I mean, you could figure that out a while ago, and now with mobile, it's even more intense.
Yes.
But then it'll be interesting to see how the server-side apps do, and maybe as a cross-deployment, can you, will there be cross-deployment where it can run as a Linux JavaScript for a desktop browser?
Right.
Not that anybody does that anymore.
Yeah.
That'll be really interesting.
But I think one of the things, and hopefully now you've seen some of why I say it's not just TypeScript, it's not just CoffeeScript, because those still expose so much of the underlying JavaScript. Like, how many different ways is it to say true and false in JavaScript? Okay, but here, I can say this is a Boolean, and it darn well better be a Boolean when I'm debugging. And so you get a lot more type safety, a lot more hints to the compiler, and then to the IDE, therefore, about what you can actually do with it. And yet, you still have that ultimate flexibility of dumping it as JavaScript and having it run reasonably fast. And they keep getting it faster. Well, Casper Lund, being one of the V8 guys, knows how to make fast VMs, knows how to make fast code. And so they're getting much, much better at this. And it's not a static language. They're doing development on it. Dart 2.0 will probably be out in about the next 6 months. Might have a bit of backward incompatibility because there are a few things that they think they got wrong. So they might fix a couple things, but there'll be translators to fix that up. Oh, built into the build process, you can do source-to-source translation. So you can annotate it with your own stuff, essentially have your own extensions, or have it pick up information from around your program and use that as a sort of metric.
Something like aspect oriented programming.
You can do that probably.
Like have something that does some basic function that doesn't have logging, and without touching ASCII, you can say, let's put logging around.
Yes, yes, sort of stuff written like that, right. The source-to-source translator is an inherent part of the process, and actually involves the real compiler with hooks. So it's literally going to be the same source to JavaScript compiler, but more the front end of it. And then you have an output more source, and then that's what goes to the input of source to JS.
You mentioned there was like conditional imports. That's always been a problem where an awful lot of languages somehow like import is only static.
Right.
And so you can't kind of probe around and see what's what and then say, I only want to import this, or I want to import this flavor instead of that.
Right.
So you can actually, not only like with a preprocessor or with some equivalent of a static, you can go run some code and then decide to import like a variable name.
Yeah. Well, actually, what they just added, and this is baked into the language now. They added lazy loading. So what that does is you define a library as asynchronous, and the compiler will make it a separate JS file. And then, but it'll still do all the calculations to make sure that it's, tree shaking and stuff, so you only get the JavaScript you really need. But if there's, say, a part of it that's only used some of the time when your app is loaded, then you can make it so, this is deferred. I'm not going to use this for now.
Okay. So, if you have something that was type checked and compiled and then running like production code that doesn't have the type checking left in it.
Yep.
And then you try to do an import, then does it have to like switch back to compiling and type checking mode to add, to do a pass load of the code that you agree?
No, you're still doing the build. And when you get the build, it's compiling the whole thing, but keeping track that these parts of the JavaScript came from one library, these parts came from another library, and puts those in two separate JS things to it.
Okay, but so then you can't at runtime do some testing of the conditions at runtime to decide to import.
Sure. Again, you define that part of it as async, and it only loads when you say, now load this, because of some condition you did.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, let's say you're doing Gmail, and you have like a rich text editor, okay? But you don't want to load that all the time. You're just reading mail.
So the thing that you load, that has to have the type checking,
No,
analyzing version of the,
no. Think of it as just
so
like,
it's pre-compiled, it's kind of like a pre-compiled class file.
it's like a jar, yeah.
Yeah, and then,
And you only load jars some of the time.
okay,
Good thing I know a little bit about Java.
all right.
Hey, let's knock it on the head here. Thank you very much, Randal. Hopefully you'll be back in a bit. Oh, hey, we'll see you. We'll see you on the inner tubes Tuesday at 8 a.m. But we'll see you. You'll be at Scale in
I'm
Pasadena.
definitely going to scale in some capacity. I'm hoping they accept my Dart talk, because so you get to see it again.
Cool. Yeah. Now, why not?
Yes.
It'll
It'll be before.
Dart could be the killer app for the year of the Linux desktop. I see it.
Right, which is right after the year of small talk.
Yeah.
Right.
And Perl.
Yeah, Perl 6.
Boo. And IPv. Well.
I can be self-deprecating.
Okay. So, hey, and I don't know if you want to hang out, but I think some of us are going to cruise over to Islands across the street,
I'm going to Buffalo Wild Wings.
or Buffalo, wherever Randal wants to go. That's where we're going to go.
And Wi-Fi.
They got great Wi-Fi there.
Islands is gonna have
Because
Wi-Fi.
remember,
Place to plug in.
what is it? The WiMAX gets cut off in a couple hours now.
Yes.
Actually, I was just reading, there's, as Judge.
But isn't it kind of noisy over there? So anyway, you're welcome to join us over there. See ya Thursday, December 10th down the street. Check out meetup.com.
Check this out, this is just this afternoon.
What?
Forget it. No, I'm not, look. They got a temporary injunction, their servers might stay on.
Whoa!
You said the scale.
This is canceled.
I didn't kill
Well, he
this.
was talking about his WiMAX service getting turned
Kill the
off.
live feed.
Because the judge ordered them to keep it on, so it's sorted out.
Hold on 1 sec.
It's a disagreement.
That's looking dead. Still here. Stop broad.